So we reacted live to the brand new trailer, and we've done a deep dive analysis on said trailer as well. However, the most exciting announcement regarding the upcoming anime adaptation of the Thousand Year Blood War arc comes from Kubo himself, who revealed that we can expect both brand new and expanded scenes in the anime from content that didn't make it into the manga for whatever reason, whether Kubo simply ran out of time to include it or chose to focus his attention elsewhere. Regardless, this is incredibly exciting. It's music to our ears. As fans of the final arc, there really is nothing that's more exciting than this. I'm a huge fan of the Thousand Year Blood War arc, but I know it's not perfect, and there are plenty of changes and additions I would make to this arc to help it feel more complete. And as a matter of fact, I have 13 such changes and additions right here that I would love to see the anime version of this arc incorporate to really help flesh things out and give everything in the final arc the justice and time it deserves. Before we get started on the video, guys, if you haven't hit subscribe yet, make sure to do that now for more Bleach content like this every single week. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up as well, as it does help to support me and the channel, as it just means we'll hopefully get more traction on the YouTube algorithm. And if you really like what I do here and you want to support me another step further, I do have a Patreon for my channel as well. You can get videos like this one early, and you can support me for as little as $1 a month. Everyone who is doing just that, who is a patron of the channel, is coming up on screen right now. And as always, I just want to give you all a massive shout out. Thank you so much for supporting me. I really do appreciate it. Alright, to kick this list off with number 13, and it's a pretty simple one: fights, fights, and more fights. The Thousand Year Blood War arc has a ton of great battles in it, don't get me wrong, but it has perhaps just as many, if not more, interrupted or off-screen battles, which unfortunately is possibly the arc's greatest sin. There are so many characters in the cast of Bleach at this point in the story that it seemed only natural that many would have to be left by the wayside. But now we have an amazing chance to really do as many of these characters justice as possible, with fights that finally get a chance to either be finished properly with proper closure or actually shown on screen for the first time. In terms of off-screen fights being brought to life, I would love to see things like Chojuro Sasakibe versus Driscoll Bursey. You can still keep the shock factor of his death intact. Basically, as he uses Bankai, you just have Driscoll take it with the medallion and then launch a javelin at him. This is, of course, after a nice little battle between the two of them. Just as the javelin looks like it's about to make contact with Chojuro, that's when you cut back to Yamamoto. That would work perfectly, in my opinion, and show us a fight for a vice captain who sorely needs it. I'd also love to see Kenpachi Zoraki take on the 3 Sternritters that he fights in the first invasion, as well as get a chance to see Byakuya Kuchiki take on the 3 Sternritters he fights in the second invasion: Candice, Nanana, and Robert. It's a great opportunity to flesh out characters like Nanana and Robert Akutrone, who again really deserved more. But also, if you want to try and give as many of the Sternritters a fight as you possibly can, it's a great chance to utilise characters who didn't get a battle but otherwise should have done, or didn't get a particularly good showing. A couple of examples here: actually show Rose versus Nanana, and maybe give Robert Akutrone to somebody like Ukitake. This is also a great chance to offer closure to fights that ended abruptly or weirdly or were interrupted, and give those characters a much better chance to shine. Of course, the prime example of this, in my opinion, that I did an entire video on, was Sternritters I and K, Kangdu, and BG9, who end their fights in such a strange way in the manga. Both of them are temporarily incapacitated, but they revive using their Volstendig, seemingly ready to go into round 2 and show us their holy forms, only for it to strangely cut to them being summarily executed for losing, despite the fact that I'm pretty sure the battle is not over if they are virtually unharmed. So I would love to see those fights get properly played out, get proper endings to them. They can still be executed if necessary, if you really want to show that, But I think this is a great chance to give them the dues they deserve and show us their holy forms as well. Alongside that, this is a great opportunity to finally clarify the missing shrifts K and N. Coming in at number 12, I want to see an increased role for the Arrancar and perhaps for Hueco Mundo itself entirely. At the start of the arc, it seems like Hueco Mundo and the Arrancar forces are going to play a sizable role as the third party in this universe-encompassing war. Except once Ichigo and his friends deal with the Vandenreich occupation of Hueco Mundo, it basically doesn't play a role again. And the vast majority of Arrancar introduced in this arc are again left at the wayside. Characters like the Tre Bestia or Loli and Menoli, characters like Rudborn and the Exequius, who are known to still be alive thanks to the light novels, they could easily play a role here. Obviously, the principal Arrancar characters like Grimjo, Neliel, they do make a return later in the story, but I think their role could easily be blown out a bit more. Maybe have a scene in the anime, a small section where they go and rescue Harabel from the confines of her jail in Silburn. I'd love to see that. There really is no point in bringing her back if you're just going to completely ignore her for the entirety of the arc. So this is a great chance to rectify that and give the Arrancar slightly more to do. That extends to actually showing the outcome of events they're involved in as well. For example, at the end of the Askin fight, we see that Neliel is rushing to try and rescue Urahara and everyone else inside the Gift Ball Deluxe. Now's a great time to actually show her succeeding. That way, you also get a chance to confirm the fates of characters like Kisuke Urahara, who are completely left up in the air as far as the 74 volumes of manga go. Now, Urahara is confirmed to be alive in the Hell arc, but for the actual story itself, the final arc, it was a very weird and underwhelming end for some of Bleach's most famous characters. Point number 11 is a similar one, but I want to see an expanded role for Execution and the Fullbringers. Now, I think Riruka and Yukio were used in a pretty clever way, quite an inspired way, actually, to help Ichigo and the gang return to the Royal Palace after having been booted out. But there is no denying that Ginjo and Tsukishima's involvement is a massive disappointment, or at least it was for me anyway. As a big fan of both of those characters and seeing them reappear in 518, seemingly training for battle at the Kukaku Shiba Palace, I was so excited to see them go toe-to-toe with some Quincy, but it never happens, and they show up seemingly as an afterthought about 5 chapters from the end of the series. Now, this is a great chance to actually give them something to do. I've always personally felt that the Bambis would be great opponents for these characters. Now, that does sort of happen in the follow-up novels, Can't Fear Your Own World. Ginjo takes on, like, Candice Catnip, but that could easily happen here in the storyline as well. And you know that a fight between Tsukishima and Giselle would be so creepy, it would be just amazing to see. Of course, with Ginjo and Tsukishima, it's a little bit more difficult to weave them into the storyline in a natural way because they literally don't appear until the very end. But you could easily have them show up at some point in the midst of the battle, in the midst of the second invasion, to do some fighting, and then they just don't meet up with anyone else until they are kind of supposed to appear in Varvelt. Maybe it would be a little contrived, but they could make it work. Coming in at number 10, I want Stern Ritter backstories. Considering how many of these characters exist, it's criminal how few of them get any kind of flashback or exposition regarding who they are and what they're all about. It's absolutely crazy. In fact, out of, something like 27 total Stern Ritters, only about 4 of them get any kind of substantial backstory whatsoever. Of course, Hashwolf and Basby are the prime examples, with some genuinely wonderful flashbacks being told that also tie into the creation of the Stern Ritter itself. Then there's Asnot, who gets a couple of pages regarding his backstory, and the duo of Lloyd and Royd get a functional backstory that only exists to explain the twist. Characters like Askin, characters like the Bambis, characters like the Schutzstoffel, literally no one gets any kind of history whatsoever, and it makes it difficult to understand how these characters fit into the context of the wider Bleach universe. Now, the Espada didn't have this issue to quite the same extent, but they still did. Characters like Yami, Aroniero, Xyloporro, Ulquiorra, Harabel in the actual canon manga had like no backstory either, but they've been shown, the anime has been shown to include a backstory for characters that were missing it. Harabel, for instance, gets an entire backstory created just for the anime itself. So I would love to see the Sturmritter, at least some of them, get the same treatment. My boy Askin, I'd love to know what he's all about, where he comes from. But in the manga itself, we have really no idea. So that's a big thing I would love to see. Now, point number 9 might seem like a bit of a weird one, but it is important to me, and I think it's important for the overall pacing and the context of the war, and that is to include a better, more satisfying direct aftermath. It is very, very weirdly handled, in my opinion, that the moment Ichigo cuts Yhwach in half, we are given no time to decompress whatsoever. The story skips ahead 10 years, and we basically skip over everything. All of the hardship, the recognition of everything these characters went through, the rebuilding process of the Soul Society. As a reader, it is unsatisfactory to basically just be told that everything is hunky-dory again, and they've survived, and the Soul Society is completely rebuilt. I'm not saying I want absolutely loads, but a direct aftermath showing people picking themselves up again after the battle, beginning to rebuild, would be wholly satisfying, I think, and really just make that ending feel less abrupt. That is something I would absolutely love to see. Characters coming together again, properly having a chance to mourn their dead, to feel the effects of the massive war they have just been through. I know that Kubo was not well at the very end of the series, so that is really a lot of the reasoning behind this, but there's no excuse to not do it in the anime. To really just give us a chance to take a breather and to bask in this massive fight that they've just been through, like it's a huge war. To skip over the emotional resonance in the downtime immediately after the battle is a crying shame, and I would love to get something like that in the anime itself before that 10-year time skip. Number 8, I think, is a popular one that will probably appear on many lists akin to this, and that is an expanded role for Isshin and Ryuken, the two father figures in this anime who really should have had more to do in the manga itself. Ryuken especially, this arc is about the Quincy, and he is practically not in it. He is the father of the boy who has seemingly betrayed his friends to get as close to Yhwach as is almost physically possible, and they only share one interaction. I don't know how you improve their roles necessarily. I think you can definitely have a couple more scenes with them. I think, for example, maybe some kind of a scene between Uryu and Ryuken before he defects to the Vandenreich would be great. But crucially for me, I think you just involve them in the final battle. When they arrive in Varvel, Isshin could go help out his former third seat Hitsugaya and the other captains against Gerard, perhaps, while Ryuken goes and helps out Uryu against Yugrum Hashwolf. I don't think you are robbing anything from that scenario by having that happen. In fact, I thought that Kubo was doing that in the story. When Hashwolf prepares to basically stab Uryu in the face and he's like, "You're all cut from the same cloth," and he brings his blade down, for me, I was like, Ryuken's about to appear. Ryuken is going to appear, block the blade, and that's like a perfect segue. But all that happens in the manga is that Uryu just casually rolls out of the way. That is just so weird to me. It's so weird to think that Hashwolf brings his blade down in like this moment of anger, and Uryu just kind of like flops out the way like a little fish. So for me, that's an amazing chance to bring in Ryuken. He, makes some disparaging remark about how pathetic Uryu is, but then they team up to fight Hashwolf. And that, for me, just makes so much sense. Maybe Isshin can go and join Ichigo against Yhwach, but I don't know, maybe that would be a bit too much like the Aizen fight, but regardless, I just want to see them both do a little more. And speaking of improving Ryuken's role, involving him in Uryu's battle, that brings me to point 7, which is expand the Uryu versus Hashwolf fight. I actually like a lot of what we get here. I think their clash of ideologies is great. This relationship is actually handled quite well. This rivalry has been bubbling for a while now. I think I said in my review of 565 Godlike You that this is clearly foreshadowing a battle between Uryu and Hashwolf, which means that Kubo did something right here. So when these two do eventually clash, it's exciting and it works really well and it's expected, which means that it's good payoff for their relationship so far. It's just a shame that the fight itself is basically non-existent. Now Kubo does show this battle numerous times, but it's really weirdly handled. It kind of resets every time we see this fight. Basically, we see Uryu and Hashwolf, they clash. The next time we see them, Uryu is battered and Hashwolf says something to him. Uryu retorts and they go to clash again. Then the next time you see them, Uryu is battered again. They retort, they go to clash again. And that's basically how the fight just goes until eventually Hashwolf is just taken out of it by the Ausvalen. So for me, I think, and Hashwolf is the Grand Master of the Sternritter. You know, he is the second in command of the Vandenreich, and it's so weird that he doesn't get a full and complete battle to really call his own. And the same does go for Uryu as well, although I'll get into that a little bit later. But for me, I think just improving this fight, you know, if we want to get really fanfiction-y and really pipe dreamy, Volstendigs for everyone involved. Maybe if Ryuken's there, we get this proper angelic Quincy battle to end all Quincy battles. I think it will happen in that I think this fight will be expanded upon, because basically all of the Schutzstaffel battles that are going on at the moment are decently lengthy. They have quite a bit happening, and so this fight is seriously, it is so obviously pushed out of the way because I don't know if Kubo just felt he was out of time and wanted to show the Yuha Bark fight instead. So Uryu versus Hashwolf needs to be expanded on in the anime. And we mentioned that we would talk a bit more about Uryu, and here we are with point number 6, which is to give both Ichigo and Uryu expanded roles in the final arc in general. Now, I get it. The Vandenreich is way more Soul Society's enemy than it is Ichigo's. But Ichigo, you know, he's a member of Soul Society, of the Gotei by proxy. He is there. He's the main character. He deserves a bigger role and a better showcase. And the same goes for Uryu as well. Uryu is playing a fascinating role in this arc, but he never really gets to make the most of it. During chapter 543, when Yuha Bark is telling everyone that Uryu will be his successor, he explicitly says, "There will be no objections, you will all get a chance to see his power in the battles to come." That never happens. Nobody ever sees Uryu do anything, basically, which is a huge shame. And really, the same goes for Ichigo. He spends a significant portion of this arc training in the Royal Palace, coming away from it brand new Zanpakuto, a new sense of power, only to do pretty much nothing for a long time. He swats away the Bambis like they are nothing. He then takes on H. Sternritter, which again should be cool, but it's just not given anywhere near enough time. Maybe if Ichigo took that fight slightly more seriously, that could be good in the anime as well. But basically, I think both of these characters just need a tentpole moment to really establish how strong they have become. For Ichigo, I think he really needed a fight against a Sternritter, a 1v1 battle, the same kind of caliber as something like him versus Grimjo, for example, in the Urankar arc. The obvious candidate, I think, is Basby here, because Basby also doesn't really get a proper fight, but that is something that I think the anime could do. It is difficult because, as I mentioned, Ichigo plays a very different role in this arc. Doesn't really have a designated rival character outside of someone like Uryu, so maybe giving him a big blowout battle against someone like Basby would feel a little hollow. But I still think it's necessary to really show us how far Ichigo has come, give us a real good showcase with these brand new Zangetsu that he has. And Uryu, as well, needs to take on someone, could be a captain, you know, anyone that he just basically destroys in battle. Of course, the obvious answer to this problem is to have Ichigo and Uryu have a proper fight in front of as many people as possible, or at least people are just witnessing this battle. prior to Uryu leaving for the royal palace. I think that would be better. Maybe they have a proper clash when Ichigo discovers that Uryu has betrayed them. They have an actual fight where Uryu is just blowing things up, and he actually looks like someone worthy of being a successor to the Emperor of the Vandenreich. Now we're entering our final 5 points, and for number 5, I want to see more Bankai. Bankai in general can come back in a big, big way in the anime version of this arc. Now, of course, this is entirely dependent on a couple of things. Are they planning on adapting Can't Fear Your Own World? Maybe. If so, then you can leave characters like Shinji and Hisagi for that. And also, what are Kubo's plans for the potential Hell arc? If there are plenty of Bankai he's planning on revealing there, then again, you can leave them until then. But this is a great chance to show off more Bankai in general, give better explanations for Bankai that are revealed in this arc, i.e. Unohana, and crucially, show us a bit more of what Ichigo's true Bankai can actually achieve. I don't know if you just cut it in half immediately again. Perhaps the impact of that twist would be lost if Yhwach Bark waited a little while, but at the same time, I think people would rather see what the true Tensei Zangetsu can do than have that twist in its full effect, because that twist was good until we realised the arc was basically at the end, and that Ichigo would now be robbed of a proper showing of everything he has worked for up until now. So, Bankai in general, show me more, explain others better, and give me more of Ichigo's true Bankai as well. And speaking of Ichigo's true Bankai, point number 4, expand the very final battle between Ichigo, Aizen, Renji, Uryu, Yhwach Bark, whoever you want to include in it. That final clash, and I'm not talking about Ichigo and Orihime versus Yhwach Bark, but the one that happens after that, right at the end of the series. I just think you need to just do a bit more with that. What we get is really good and really exciting. It's obviously awesome to see Aizen involved properly, using Hardo 99, but if you really want to get fanfiction-y over here, you know, this is an opportunity to reveal Aizen's Bankai, if that's something that's ever going to be done. This is a great opportunity to really show what Ichigo's true Bankai can do. And I think in line with the expanded role for Ryuken, you know, you have foreshadowed the Still Silver Arrow way before where it is done in the manga, so that gets more relevance here, that gets more impact. It feels better to see Yhwach Bark taken down that way. I think you can make changes to basically the final showdown with Yhwach Bark in general. Bring in more characters if necessary. I'd love to see more of the war potentials going up against Yhwach Bark himself. I think that would be awesome. Again, I don't know how that would fit, but regardless, I mean, you know, include Ginjo Kugo. He's there in Varvel. That'd be so neat, bringing back both of the primary bad guys of the last 2 arcs. I'm not saying Ginjo would necessarily be able to do an awful lot, but at the same time, he's a Soul King candidate, so maybe he would. I think that would be really great. But I think just expanding on this final battle in general, again, to make it not feel quite so rushed, would be fantastic. Now, the final battle against Aizen also felt similarly a little bit rushed back in the Urankar arc, and they didn't really change that at all. However, I don't believe we had such an overt declaration by Kubo that they would be bringing in new content for that arc, so anything could really happen here. Point number 3 is dependent entirely on whether or not they plan on adapting Can't Fear Your Own World. If they do, then you can basically scratch this off the list completely. However, if they don't, I would love to see the Soul King's history incorporated here somewhere. Knowing more about this mysterious godlike figure felt like a total blank spot in the final arc, considering the role the Soul King plays, the importance he has in holding these worlds together, the fact that he's apparently Yhwach Bark's all-seeing father. To learn basically nothing about him was really weird, and the Soul Society's original sin in general would be great to see brought to life, to learn as much as we can about this mysterious figurehead at the top of the hierarchy of Soul Society. I think that would be so fantastic. And this idea of them potentially adapting Can't Fear Your Own World can also be brought into that earlier idea I mentioned of having a more satisfying and fleshed out aftermath. If they're not going to adapt Can't Fear Your Own World, the aftermath is a great time to show and tie up loose ends that weren't covered in the manga. For example, Yhwach's corpse being made the new Soul King. If they're going to do Can't Fear Your Own World, we don't have to show that now, but if they're not, that is when it should be done, because leaving the series with no idea as to who the current Soul King is because they've seemingly just killed Yhwach, and the world should be collapsing, but Kubo didn't say what was going on, felt like an egregious error, a missed opportunity. So the Soul King, kind of in general, the mystery surrounding him, his past, the future of the Soul King, that should all be shown off here. Number 2 on this list is not going to surprise anybody, and I think that the vast majority of fans of the final arc, or even just readers of the final arc, want this. And I think we'll get it as well. And that is, of course, a full and complete battle between the Zero Division and Yhwach's Schutzstaffel. The Zero Division have been hyped up for a long time now, and maybe the community is partly to blame for that, for potentially hyping them up beyond what they were ever likely to be, what they were likely to bring to the table. That being said, it is a massive shame that these extremely powerful, potentially ancient captains are introduced, and they have their big shining moment against these extraordinarily powerful invaders. This is like everything that the plotline with the Royal Palace has been building to. This is what Eisen wanted to achieve, and now we're seeing it playing out in real time. The Schutzstaffel are invading the Royal Palace. They are stepping on holy ground with the goal of destroying the Zero Division and the Soul King. This should be the battle to end all battles. This should be crazy, like an absolutely just insane slugfest. What we get in the manga is a lot of good build-up, and then no battle whatsoever. Unfortunately, after the build-up kind of gets going, and the Schutzstaffel are seemingly defeated but then return stronger than ever, the fight should have then kicked into high gear. You know, these captains should be doing everything, pulling out the stops to defeat these guys. This is their life mission, to defend the Royal Palace. Unfortunately, all we see is that they have been defeated off-screen. Definitely one of the biggest missed opportunities and errors of the Thousand Year Blood War arc, and now they have a chance to rectify that. I want to see the Schutzstaffel going toe-to-toe with the Zero Division, pulling out as much as they can to protect the Royal Palace. Maybe you split them off and do some 1v1s. They don't have to be that long, but maybe that's the way you do it, or you do just do a big battle royale showing teases of the Shrifts. You don't have to go into total detail. I'm not expecting Lil Barrow to activate his second Volstendig form, for instance, here. But you just need to give them something. And it's the weirdest thing about this whole situation is that the Zero Division were the ones everyone was really excited for. Yhwach's Royal Guard kind of came out of nowhere, and yet they are the ones who get ample screen time and frankly fantastic fights, whereas the Zero Division are just wiped out without a care in the world. So that one for me is a big one that I would love to see. Number 1 on this list is one that I think maybe is already confirmed that we are getting, but this is, in my opinion, the most crucial missing element of the final arc, the key ingredient that is completely conspicuously absent. The final arc is called the 1,000 Year Blood War, but you wouldn't really know why, but just by reading the story. There are allusions to the fact that the Shinigami and the Quincy fought 1,000 years ago. There are allusions to the idea that Yamamoto battled Yhwach all that time ago and somehow overcame the Quincy and their invading force. And we see the smallest of teases that this battle is about to take place in the Friend Saga. Yhwach is preparing to invade Soul Society. but we just never see it. We never see that crucial battle 1,000 years ago, the namesake of the final arc itself, that ultimate cataclysmic duel between Yamamoto and Yhwach that would eventually come back to haunt him in the present day. The key flashback that would have lent context to everything that we didn't get, I hope we get now. The anime is a great, just perfect opportunity to dive deep into the history that so plagues this final arc. And I think Kubo already said, when talking about these new scenes, this new content, that he was very excited for Yamamoto versus Yhwach, and that he thought it looked amazing so far. Now, I'm not entirely sure if he is talking about this battle 1,000 years ago in terms of the context of new and expanded scenes. That would make sense, but I guess he could be talking about perhaps an expansion on the fight in the first invasion. But I choose to believe he's talking about the battle 1,000 years ago, and I just really hope that we do get to see it. Because I think we have to. I think we absolutely have to see why this battle is 1,000 years in the making, where these Quincy have come from. Yhwach explains it. He explains how they've survived all this time, but we should see it. We should see the Quincy escaping from their lost battle back into the Soul Society to hide in the shadows and wait patiently for their chance to strike. And I think we will get it. I think we will see what happens to Yhwach, how Yamamoto overcomes him, why Yhwach ends up being sealed again, waiting 999 years for his eventual return. This is key, crucial stuff. And so I think that we will see it. I think that we have to see it. And I will be disappointed if we don't. But for me, that is my number one pick for what I absolutely want to see the most. But really, anything from this list of 13 points will be a net positive. Any of these points, in my opinion, would make this arc better than it already was, and so that's only a good thing in my eyes. But that's it for this video, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. Let me know, what do you think about my list of 13 changes and additions I'd like to see made to the final arc in its anime version? Do you agree with my list? Did I miss things out that you would like to see? Do please let me know in the comments below. Leave your lists as well. I would absolutely love to hear them. Guys, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done already, and until next time, I'll catch you later. I'll see you then.